here, and then of course everyone that is joining us on Zoom. And I will let her click on that, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And as she mentioned, we will have questions and answers at the end of the program. So if you have anything, do like me, write it down, because I'll forget. If I can't raise my hand and ask it then, I'll surely forget. And as she mentioned, I'm the Financial Wellness Director for Neighbors, but more importantly, I was a caregiver for my father for 4 years before he passed in 2020. And so that's why I'm very passionate about being here today, not only because I love teaching people about money, but I do know that I learned a lot more about money as a caregiver in terms of having to deal with my father. And so hopefully I can just share some of my experiences, add that in with my experience with money, and maybe be a benefit or asset to some of you as you go through it. I think she already told my story. I've been in finance and banking for the last 26 years. Doesn't seem like I'm that old, right? We all agree. And of course, the last 7 years as the Financial Wellness Director for Neighbors. And of course, I spent 4 years living with my dad, moved in to take care of him as he faced Lewy body dementia. So on our agenda for today, I want to talk about the roles of a caregiver, the roles and responsibilities, things I didn't know I would have to do it myself as I took over as a caregiver. The financial assessment. Basically, how do you get your finances straight? What are you dealing with? Your loved one's finances, how to make those assessments, and then tips on managing and budgeting for loved ones. And then finally, lessons learned. There were lots of those. So for starters, the journey of a caregiver. And I thought about this. I've actually put this presentation together last year. Miss Christie came to me and asked me if I would do it. And I looked at it from 3 different perspectives, and I don't know which one you would come from, but definitely there's that recent diagnosis. If you have a loved one and they were recently diagnosed, and so this is completely new to you, right? Or maybe there's that person that it's been changing all along, but we're so close, we can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. You know, when you live with a person or you see a person all the time, it's not so easy to see those changes. You know, or sometimes we don't want to see the changes, or then you might find yourself in a circumstance like I had. My dad was Superman for 51 years, and then all of a sudden overnight it changed, and we were really, really blindsided by it. But somehow I wish someone had shared this particular picture with me, and it says, stop looking at your life in the rearview mirror. You're not going that way. So when it happened to me and to my family, I can tell you the date. It was May 31st, 2016. And on June 1st, June 2nd, June 3rd, I kept looking in the rearview mirror like, life before this, why can't we get back here? Why can't we get back here? So I really wish somebody had shared that with me, because I think if I had been able to turn my attention a little bit sooner as to what was ahead of me, I probably would have been a little bit better of a caregiver. So I thought that that was something I really wanted to share with you. Another tip that I want to share with you is having a journal. And some of this stuff it may not be rocket science. I'll tell you stories all throughout. I was pregnant with my first child, and I threw up every day for 9 months. But it never failed in month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Somebody would walk up to me and say, well, have you tried crackers? So again, if you're aware of this, hopefully it may be new to somebody else, but I found the journal to be the most useful tool during my journey as a caregiver. If you just look at the list, if nothing else, a to-do list, because you have a whole new task of things to do. Your prescription schedules. Unfortunately, this disease does not come with the need for medication. Task list for supporters to help keep everybody on track. Who's doing what today? Who has mom on Monday? Who's feeding her on Tuesday, right? The budget. And we'll talk a little bit more about the budget, but again, this journal can help you with that. To take down little things, the increase in expenses. And while this screen or this presentation is a year old, we had an increase in expenses then, but now, wow. Everywhere we go, we're noticing a change in our expenses. So whether it's for our personal needs or those that we're caring for, changes in that individual's health, because you want to be able to communicate that information when you're in front of their doctors. Information for healthcare professionals, again, those questions. I know I would have them in my head when things were coming along, as I would see, oh, I need to mention this to the doctor. And then I'd get in front of them and what was I supposed to ask? So having that journal can really be helpful. And then, of course, those important people, numbers, and addresses. So a journal is really, really probably one of the most useful tools you can have. And if no other reason, just to sometimes get out our thoughts. What are we feeling today? What's going on with us? You know, maybe there are things that we want to be able to say, and we shouldn't, but we can verbalize them in a letter. So a journal is a really, really powerful tool for a caregiver. Next, I want to focus our attention on defining our roles. You know, I was the middle child, and I thought I was the favorite, and that's all I thought I needed to know. But obviously, that was not the case. Things changed when we found out that my dad, he had Parkinson's, but he suffered from Lewy body dementia. And so understanding your role, understanding your responsibilities. You could be a companion, it could be a spouse. You may play the role to where all you're doing is basically being there for a person. Maybe it's the medical assistant, that person that's in charge of making sure mom or dad or our loved one is taking their medication, helping them with their medical needs. Maybe they need somebody to help them walk. Personal assistant. I can't comb my own hair, so you know, I could definitely see where I could use an assistant. You know, somebody just to help us with those personal things. Make out that grocery list. Maybe help clean around the house. Financial affairs, which we'll definitely dive into. Maybe that person to help us with those matters. Maybe we can take care of our own self, but maybe taking care of our financial affairs has gotten a little bit tricky. And then there's the legal affairs. We all have certain things that we need to take care of legally, living wills, things of that nature. So you could be one of those roles and you could be multiple roles, but it's important to define what is your role? What will you be assisting your loved one with? And then there's characteristics of the relationship. As I mentioned, I was the middle child. And of course, that comes with middle child syndrome, right? Because the oldest gets to do what they want to do because they're the oldest, and the youngest gets to do what they want to do because they're the youngest. And then there was me. So then you have to define what are the characteristics between you and that particular person. There's a like versus love. We can love people, but we don't always like them. But it's important to understand what that relationship is, because as we go through the slides and we talk about the responsibilities that you have, it's important to know how you feel about that person and how that person feels about you, what that interaction is going to be like. Introvert versus extrovert. If you're an introvert and you're a caregiver, it can be a little challenging because you're going to need to be able to speak up sometimes on behalf of the person you're caring for. You're going to have to be able to talk and sometimes be a little bit more social just to get information. I remember having to come here. I was a little bit of an introvert. I know you're saying she's up there talking all morning, right? But it, you know, it pushed me out of my shell because there are questions I had to ask, places I had to go, environments I had to become adjusted to for the well-being of my loved one. And of course, if you're an extrovert, you know, then you're in the right place, right? Because you love talking to people. Is your loved one public or are they private? You know, when you have opposites, especially in a circumstance like this, it is very important that we are respectful for the other person. And so, you know, we have social media these days, and some people like to post everything, right? And your loved one may not want that information out there. So to understand what their dynamic is, are they very private? Are they okay with you sharing their information? You may have the best of intentions. I just want, you know, all of your cousins 3 states away to know that you're okay. Or that maybe you need a get well card, but they may not want you to share that information. So definitely make sure you understand that relationship. Trust or mistrust. Sometimes being put in a caregiver circumstance may not be by choice. It may just be circumstance. And it depends on what that relationship has been. Is there trust in the relationship? Whether it's a spouse, whether it's a sibling or child, but defining if there's trust, because that person is going to need to be able to trust you with their well-being, trust you with their health, their care, and maybe even their finances, depending on what role you have. Is that person going to be dependent? Meaning, will they need you for almost everything? Or are they going to be independent? and you're just there as support? Is there unity, or has there been an estranged relationship? Because again, sometimes we're put in these circumstances and we did not see it coming. Pride or humble? That's a really, really big one, because as we all grow old, the one thing that we don't want to lose is our independence. And it seems like pride seems to get in the way. And sometimes you have individuals that need assistance and they don't know how to ask for help. So understanding that dynamic, understanding the characteristics of the person that you're dealing with, or even your own characteristics. And is that person fun or serious, right? Because we want to have fun. We don't want it to all be doom and gloom. But then we have to make sure, is this a fun or a serious person? My dad was always serious, never told jokes. All right, and then of course, when we get to the finances, are they a saver or a spender? Because again, if you're going to be that person now taking over somebody else's finances and you're a spender and they're a saver, I can see some troubled waters brewing ahead. Now I want to focus a little bit on support. So we've talked just a little bit about the different roles that you may play. And like I said, you may play many of them. And of course, the different characteristics. But let's talk about your support in defining your roles. And again, it could be a spouse, a sibling, a child, a parent. It could be extended family or friends. But who can you count on for support? Okay. How can they support you? Will it be time, money, or emotional support? It's important to make those assessments. Is your support local or is it long distance? Because obviously if it's long distance, it is going to be limited. But it's important to define that. And again, all of these things, if you have not given thought to them, that journal will be really, really helpful to take some time and think about, who do I have that's in my corner? Who can help us out if we need help? And have they even offer support? But most importantly, don't be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to ask for help. My dad was one of those people, he didn't like to ask for help. And I think that's the one thing that I took away from that relationship, is that it's really, really important, because that's why we were blindsided. He kept his illness to himself until he couldn't keep it to himself anymore. So it's really, really important to ask for help. And sometimes I go through my mind and wonder, had he asked for help sooner, would things have turned out differently? So even as a caregiver, don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's a really challenging job. All right, understanding your authority. So even after you understand your role, what is your authority? And again, and I like to kind of put it in a business perspective, or you're a sole proprietor. You're the only person, you're the next of kin, you're the spouse. You have the authority to make all those decisions. You can decide how money is spent, what their health care is going to be, what their living conditions are going to be. Or is it a partnership? Maybe it's because you're siblings. I couldn't move without talking to my brother and sister, because we're all one unit, right? I didn't have any more authority than the other. So again, understanding where your role is, or is it a corporation? Is it a group effort, right? Because you may be part of a large family. So it's really, really important. Even though I lived with him and took care of him, I still didn't feel like I had any more authority than my sister and my brother, because they were his children too. So being able to define, what is your authority? What decisions, if any, can you make on your own? And what decisions does the family or friends or support system need to have and make together? Put it in writing when possible. Doesn't have to be signed by an attorney, but just so that there is clarity and there's no misunderstandings or assumptions. I think I put here, make no assumptions. Sometimes we're like, oh, well, you know, this person lives with them, they'll take care of all of these things. And that's not really the case. So make sure you define these roles and put them in writing. Sometimes we get confused. What did they say? What should I do? Or if there's something that happens, we can go back and say, well, this is what we agreed upon. And sometimes, even if you agree upon it, things may need to change, but it's really, really good to put these things in writing, and especially when we come to financial matters. So first and foremost, before we get into the loved one, I want to talk to you as a caregiver. One of the reasons I'm here is to talk about your finances. How do you create a budget? How do you keep things in order while you're taking care of your loved one? First and foremost, you want to do a self-financial assessment. Where do you stand with your finances? You want to do a budget analysis, a credit analysis, and a banking analysis. So let's look at those three. For yourself, excuse me, self-financial assessment budget, you want to have basically a plan for your money. And hopefully this is something you were doing all along anyway, because everybody should have a budget. But maybe somehow you were able to make it through life without actually having that written plan. But now I would say more so than ever, with this change in your life, change in your circumstance, you want to make sure that you do have a budget. And a budget is really a written plan for your money. We want to take it out of our heads and we want to put it on paper. We want to account for our net income less our expenses. And that's basically what a budget is. It seems to be complicated, but it's not. This is how much money comes in my household. This is how much money goes out of my household, right? Do those numbers look okay? Is it red at the bottom or is it black? This will help reduce stress. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir when I say there are going to be times being a caregiver is stressful, right? So if there's something that I can help you with that will help you reduce stress, I can tell you having a budget, having a plan for your finances is just one less thing that you would have to worry about. A budget doesn't have to be this formal sheet. You can go online and find any formal sheet that you want to that lists. I put this in here just so we can kind of identify when you're making a budget, what kind of things should you include? And I really want to say everything where you spend money on, right? What I love about doing budgets and doing them in person, I like to go around the room and see the lady that wears glasses. When is it time for you to get a new prescription, right? We don't think about those things when we do a budget. Or if I see that the nails are done, how often are you going, right? There's so much that you can tell about a person just by looking at them, but we want to make sure that we include those. So this can be a tool. You can go online and get a worksheet just as a tool to help you go through, well, what am I spending my money on? Because it's easy to say how much your mortgage payment is, how much insurance is, how much gas or groceries are, but it's those little things. How much do I spend on grooming? All right, basic pen and paper, it's all you need because you need to know where you stand financially. That way it'll help you understand what's to come because now I am a caregiver. All right, and again, be thorough. I usually suggest people look at their bank statements for the previous 2 months because again, those big bills, those are easy. But how many of us go to the car wash, right? And if you go to the car wash every week, let's say that's $7 a pop. It's not a bill that comes in the mail, but that's 28 bucks right there, all right? So many times somebody will show me their budget. Oh, I make $2,000 a month, and then their expenses will only add up to $1,500. But yet I don't have $500 extra dollars. Where's that money goes? So when we start looking at the statement, oh, Netflix. All right, now we're getting closer. Oh, I forgot the dog goes to the groomer every week, right? So you want to be as thorough as you can. So outside of the things that we can think of, definitely look at your bank statements or whatever tool you use to spend money, and that will help you fill in the gaps because we don't want to leave anything out. If there's a deficit, right? When you look at your budget and you find, oh my God, I am spending more than I'm bringing in. It should be a surprise, but sometimes it is. You want to reduce your expenses. So I'll just go over a couple things. Pay your bills on time because that definitely reduces expenses, right? If you're paying your bills on time, you're not paying late fees. You're minimizing the amount of interest that you have to pay. Sometimes there are places or businesses now, they will decrease your bill just for going paperless. I'm a big proponent on reviewing statements. How many of us get bills in the mail and we just open it and zoom in on how much is due, right? We need to look at it. What are we paying for? All right. Do we need all of these services? And I'll tell you the story of my dad. I took over his bills in 2016. And I love that I'm talking to a group of seasoned women because you can relate. Sometimes I'm talking to teeny boppers and they don't have a clue. So my dad had AT&T. And on his bill in 2016, he was being charged for long distance service, right? Long distance service. Why? He had a cell phone. But my point is AT&T was never going to pick up the phone and call him and say, Mr. So-and-so, you have long distance service. You haven't made a long distance call in 10 years. Can we take this amount off of your bill? That was not going to happen. But if somebody didn't read that bill to realize This is what was this was a part of that $99, right? We like those round numbers, $99, let's just pay the bill and move on. So review your statements, make sure that you are getting a service that you need, that you are paying for services that you get, because that was $16 we eliminated from this bill. Didn't matter whether he needed the $16 or not, he definitely was not using long distance service. Again, shop with a list. These are just things to help you reduce your expenses, okay? If there's still more room that needs to be had, you can increase your income. And I know that when you're a caregiver, you really have limited time sometimes, but you may be able to seek compensation as a caregiver. You know, you may be caring for somebody that's already in your home, but there may be a system set up to where you can get paid for that service now, and that will help you bring income, especially if it's preventing you from going and doing outside work. So check into those services. Of course, there's always seasonal part-time work. I think the biggest income agent these days is selling stuff. I challenge you, ladies, if we would meet again, to go home, look around our living rooms, our kitchens, our bedrooms. We have stuff. We have lots of stuff. We don't know why we bought this stuff, where this stuff came from, and some of it is still in the box we've never used, right? And you've heard this term, one man's trash is what? Another man's treasures. And so sometimes you have a wealth of income right here on your living room floor. Don't overlook that, okay? House sitting. You know, or even sometimes we have hobbies. I was commenting on this beautiful quilt in this room, and I said I admire people that have that talent. I can barely get a needle and thread and sew a button back on a pair of pants. I'm embarrassed that I pay somebody $5 to do that. But if you have that talent, that's a hobby that you do, you may be able to turn that into income. So it doesn't mean that you have to go out the home and find a full-time job just to kind of piece together a little bit more income to eat up at a deficit. Now we want to talk about the credit assessment, right? We talked about the budget. That's our cash flow. How much money is going in? How much money is going out? Well, we don't want to overlook credit. We know that caregiving can be expensive, or if this is going to be a shop, hold on to your seat because we'll talk about some of that. So the first thing is to know what your credit looks like. Go to annualcreditreport.com. That way you can identify what's on your report. If there are mistakes or errors, you have an opportunity to clean it up. Understand what your borrowing power is. You know, being a caregiver comes with many surprises. It was 2016 when my dad first became ill. It was May 31st, 2016. And what happened right behind that? The flood, right? The flood. And so, of course, his home was destroyed. He had 5 feet of water, and I think FEMA dropped him a couple of pennies. And so then there was the SBA loan. And I found myself in a position to where we needed to be able to rebuild his house, and he didn't have sufficient income, right? But I knew what my buying power was, so that I knew that I would be able to step in and help him out. But, you know, didn't foresee any of that. You know, so again, if I could go back in time and look at this slide, it would have really, really been helpful, because what if I didn't have any buying power? Did I have time to get it together? So especially if you're early in the gate, or early out the gate, if you will, you have an opportunity just to look and see. It doesn't mean that you have to get new credit, but at least you understand where you are. And if there's some things that you may want to clean up just so you can put yourself in a position in case it's necessary, it gives you time to do it. So understand your buying power, understand your debt. Do you have an effective plan to reduce or eliminate debt? Because maybe now is the time to do it. We've been shopping, we've been doing things, you know, just how we want to, but now we may need to watch our money. Do we have a plan to eliminate the debt that we have, you know? Understand the impact of co-signing for a loan. Fortunately, being in finance, I knew full well what I was doing. I walked into it with both eyes wide open, but I've seen many people that have co-signed that didn't. Who wouldn't want to help their loved one? Who wouldn't want to help dad get back in his house? Or, you know, your spouse or your sibling, or even a friend, because some people are just that compassionate. They want to help everybody. There's no limits. But understand, what does it mean for you? Okay, dad's gone. I have an SBA loan. I went into it eyes wide open. I want to make sure that if you're in a circumstance like that, that you go into it eyes wide open. Because when you co-sign for a loan, that means it's your loan. Okay? It is your loan. Sometimes we don't realize that until after we've signed it. Understand what your debt to income is. How much debt do you have? What is your income? All right. Did that loan that I got to help dad out prevent me now from being able to get a new car, get a house, right? Make sure that these are things that you're aware of. You know, understand what late or missed payments may mean, because again, if that other person, if you're doing it to help them and they're supposed to be the person financially responsible for paying it and they don't, whether it's intentional or unintentional, how will that impact your credit? Okay, plan for the worst, but hope for the best. Okay, now just a simple banking assessment, because we would not be doing I would not be doing a well job if we didn't talk about banking. Your checking account management. Sometimes the very basics are where we struggle. Do you know how much money is in your account? What is your average daily balance? Do you experience overdrafts? If you're struggling with a checking account, know that there is financial assistance wherever you may bank, whether it's with the bank, whether it's a credit union. Reach out to somebody if you're struggling so that we can, again, eliminate stress where stress does not have to exist. Savings account. You want to hopefully have some money saved. If not, it's never too late to start. Never, ever too late to start. Emergency. Because again, with my dad's circumstance, it was overnight. We didn't see it coming. He was fine one day. He actually fell in the middle of the night, and I found him about 12 hours later the next day, because at the time he was working. He lived on his own. Again, he was my Superman. And then all of a sudden he was dependent on me, my sister, and my brother. And so, you know, we were in the dark in terms of what his finances were. Okay, did I have my own emergency savings? What could I do for him immediately? Did I have regular savings? I definitely want to make sure I have retirement savings, because I know that I'm going to get older and I want to make sure that I have something set aside for me. And then time-saving resources. As a caregiver, I always found that my time was very constricted. Even after my dad passed in 2020 from Parkinson's, you know, going places, I was always, oh, I gotta get back, I gotta get back, I gotta get back. I'm just now being able to go somewhere and like, oh, I don't have to get back, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very time constricting sometimes job. And so you wanna make life as easy as possible. So even with banking, automatic deposits, debits, online banking. So these are things that we can take care of right from the comfort of our homes. We don't have to go get in traffic in Baton Rouge. We don't have to wait in long lines in the bank or in the drive-through. So, you know, time-saving tools whenever you can do so. Now we want to talk a little bit about managing our loved ones' finances, because you've had an opportunity to look at what you need to check out for yourself, regardless of the role, to know where you are. Because once we look at our assessment, now we can look at our loved ones and see, well, how can we help if we need to? Start at home, the impact of caregiving. Be open about your responsibilities with your immediate family members, right? If we're going to be taking on a new role, a new responsibility, especially if it impacts our finances, you want to be open with those that it may impact, right? I had what I considered 2 young children at the time. They're 22 and 17 now, but that meant that maybe they wouldn't get as much frivolous stuff, right, as before. My time was not going to be as free as it was before. So you want to make sure that you have those conversations. Your changes in routine. You know, I'm a very routine-oriented person, and this definitely was a change in my routine. Financial changes, right? Because we'll talk in a minute about some of the expenses that come with being a caregiver that I inherited. Housing accommodations, social life, personal time, family time. So you want to have those conversations, because ultimately it is going to impact your finances. You know, whether you're going out more, whether you're staying in more, it is going to have a profound impact on your finances. So let's take a look at some of the expenses that come with being a caregiver. Food, number one. And you may say, well, we already buy food. But sometimes because of the illness, maybe they need a special diet, and that becomes a lot more expensive. You know, we can cook every day like we would have, that would be great, but maybe we need to add insure to our diets. Maybe we need to eat foods with more protein. You know, sometimes we eat just whatever is available, right? We don't think about it. But now if you have a person that has special needs, right, you want to make sure that we account for food and the expenses that may come with it. Medications, right? There's always medicine involved. Housing, transportation, grooming, entertainment, all of these are things or expenses that come along with caregiving, again, depending on your role, and they can definitely increase your budget. Identify your financial status. And we're talking about the loved ones. Are they independent? Are they aware of their expenses, their debts, their assets? Maybe it's early on and they're able to function normal right now. They're able to take care of their finances, right? You're just there to support. Maybe they're mildly dependent. They need some assistance taking care of finances. They know who they owe. They know what day is due, but maybe it's just a little bit more convenient that you write out the checks for them, or you're gonna just double check behind them just to make sure. But understand that role, and it's really, really important that you understand, because if we assume mom, dad, whomever the loved one is, that they're on top of it and they're not, it can be really, really costly in the long run. Remember, we talked about paying bills on time. So if it slips their mind that the light bill is due, that could be an extra 30 or 40 bucks. So we want to make sure that we're clear whether they're independent, mildly dependent, or severely dependent. They need you to take care of it. It's now going to be your responsibility to make sure the lights stay on, that the water stays on, that the mortgage is paid. So understanding clearly, and then being aware of if something changes, because maybe now they're independent. And remember that journal, writing things down. Everything went great this month. Ooh, the light bill was about 2 days late. It seemed like it was just that one incidental thing. We're not really to change them down to severely dependent, but we're just gonna make a note, because maybe it was just a fluke. I forget from time to time things, right? But we want to make sure, because then if we see a pattern, then we can go back and say, yes, I can see now where maybe we need to change from independent to mildly dependent, or to another category based on this pattern that I've journaled, right? Think about the risk associated though when you're managing a loved one's affairs. They do not come without risk. You want to make sure you assess how much cash they have, what their debit cards and credit cards are, what their need is to access money. There were times my dad would ask for money. For what? He went to a day, and like an adult day center. I'm like, well, what do you need $100 for? I just want to have some money, right? Can this person be trusted with $100? 5 or 10 if they lose it, but 100. So you want to make sure that you're on top of it. What do they need money for? Is it safe for them to carry it? Will they be able to keep up with it or account for it? Are they at home and they love online shopping, right? I know this is more for the women than the men. Right? Mom seems okay on most days. Her favorite show is QVC. She seems quiet. That's my resting time. As long as her favorite show host is on, I can take a nap, I can get some stuff done. But then later we found out that mom and her favorite co-host have been talking a lot, and they've ordered a lot of stuff. And unbeknownst to you, now there's a lot of money due. So you want to be careful of those things. And of course, it goes without saying that scam artists, they're targeting all of us, right? And one of the things that I've learned in this business, because I grew up thinking, oh yes, it's always the older people, the people that just aren't, in the here and now that get scammed. But somebody corrected me and said, no, they're the ones that are most available because they're at home. They can answer the phone, they can answer the door. I'm at work, so they're not likely to be able to reach me. So it's not just for the elderly, but definitely they are out there and they are targeting all of us. I do a whole class just on the different tricks that they use, but we definitely want to be careful of that, because yes, they're going to call mom, they're going to call dad, they're going to call our loved ones. And if they can get any information out of them, whether it's a social security number, a bank account number, we want to be really, really careful in terms of how much access these scam artists have to our loved ones. Risk of theft. This is a really, really big one, especially if you're not going to be the full-time caregiver and you may have to share those responsibilities with someone else, especially someone. Sometimes it could be outside the family, but it could very well be inside the family. How easy is their financial information accessed? Is it just laid on the kitchen cabinet, on a credenza where anybody that visits the house can see and access this information? These are things that you want to think about it, because maybe before it was just a small network of individuals that came in and out of the house, but now because of the illness, maybe more people are coming in because there's support. But more people in and out the door may be putting you at a higher risk. And we don't like to think that our family would do it. We don't think that our friends or our loved ones would put us in this position. But it's better to, again, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? You don't want to treat them as suspicion. You don't want to pat them down coming in, but you do want to be a little cautious with that information if you have more people coming in. Do they have a history of sharing financial information? I can tell you stories working at a financial institution. We'd have individuals that were not able to take care of their finances, and then they would have their paid caregiver, like somebody from an agency, on their account. And I can tell you, we wouldn't be talking about it if those things turned out well, okay? So you want to be really careful about that. And then, of course, victim of theft, whether, again, it's a caregiver, a family, or a friend. That's why you really want to be aware of what that person's finances are, especially if there are more than one set of hands in the pot, right? Because it happens. You see it on the news all the time. A caregiver takes checks, or they'll, somebody will sign the bottom of it because they think they're signing the bottom of it for their light bill. And here it is, this person has made a check payable to themselves. It's despicable to think that there are people that will take advantage of any person, but definitely somebody that is not able to manage their funds themselves. But it happens, and these are things that we have to, be aware of. And in a circumstance where if you have a loved one, and let's say they put me on their account, right? That gives me access to it. If I'm a dishonest person and you put me on the account, then you can't come back later and say, I stole the money because you put me on the account. So you have to be very careful with this and make sure that you're aware of it. Make sure you're aware if they're putting individuals on the account or what type of access that person has, because it, again, in a circumstance like that, I'm not the criminal, right? I probably did something that's highly unethical. But if I had access to the account, if I was made a joint on the account, then there's not a lot that the loved ones can do after the fact, okay? Keep receipts, and again, we go back to that journal. Being a caregiver can sometimes put us in a precarious circumstance, right? I told you I'm that one sibling, and I was the person taking care of the affairs, but I always felt that I wanted to keep receipts because I was in control. Well, where'd Dad's money go? Where's his check going? What did you spend it on, right? I kept receipts for everything. I didn't ever feel like my siblings would come and say that, but I just felt I would be prepared in case there was ever a question, because I've seen it happen with so many other families. And I didn't want there to be a situation where, yeah, can you account for this $200? I wouldn't remember. So I kept receipts, or I kept a journal. Again, that journal will come up again and again because it was life savings. I even sometimes still go back and just look at it and see, how impactful it was. What was my state of mind when I wrote this? What was going on? Just to be able to kind of just relive it sometimes. All right, the scavenger hunt. Anybody like scavenger hunts? Imagine one day, Superman, the next day, he can't tell you who he owes. And you don't know who he owes, and you're not joined on any of the accounts. And so the scavenger hunt begins. He had a part-time job because he didn't want to sit at home. How much money does Dad make? Didn't have a clue. Does he get a paper check? Is it direct deposited? Where is it direct deposited? Right? He's retired. What's his retirement income? Right? Savings, does he have savings? And unfortunately, your spouse, your sister, your parent, your child, whatever it may be, we can't just walk into the bank and say, hey, my husband has an account here and he's not feeling well. I need to see what kind of money he has. I need to see if the mortgage payment has been made. No, ma'am, Is your name on the account? No, sir. Is your name on the account? And I see the frustration when people come in because they feel like we're being mean. No, 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 we can't tell you. But we are required to protect their interests, right? And so if you just walk in and you're trying to get information, as I was after my dad was injured, there were roadblocks, right? I wasn't on his accounts. And even if I was his spouse, it didn't matter. I wasn't joined on the account. So you want to make sure if you don't have this information and you're going to be somebody primary in a primary caregiver role, taking care of finances, that you find that out now. You may think, oh, that's years off. We're not there yet. But it could catch you by surprise. And I didn't know, when's his light bill due? Does he have money in his account? Is it on automatic draft? I was on a scavenger hunt. If they do have income, how sustainable is it, right? Remember we talked about those different caregiver roles? Did we just find out? Was it an overnight change? Did we see it coming? You know, are we now just in the beginning stages and we're preparing for it? So he was working at the time, but after that particular incident, no, that income was not going to be sustainable. He was not going back to work. Can they continue to work if they're working? How long might they work? Because right now it may look good. They still have an income. They're still able to go to their job. But we want to look at our finances and look at their finances. What happens if it stops? Will we still be able to put groceries in the house? Will we still be able to keep the lights on? These are things that you definitely want to look at sooner rather than later. All right. And then, of course, looking at their debts and obligations. Who do they owe? Check bank statements, check the mail, look through all the paperwork. If you ever wanted to be a detective, right? We all love Scooby-Doo growing up, right? We wanted to ride in that van and have fun and solve a mystery. Well, here's your opportunity. Look at who they owe. Again, check those bank statements so that you're not blindsided, because you would hate to lose a valuable asset for our loved ones because we did due diligence in finding out and taking care of their finances for them. What do they owe? Living expenses, right? Those everyday expenses that they have. What are the due dates? How often do they pay it? It was the simple little things that caught me off guard that I had to juggle and figure out, because some things came out of the checking account, some things went on a credit card. So first I had to gain access to it, then figure out what went where. It was really a puzzle. It was really a puzzle. All right. What is the purpose of the debt? Is it a need? Is it a want? Is it something that we're going to be able to sustain? Is it something that we need to go ahead and nip in the bud, right? Where is the debt paid? Is it auto draft, debit account, credit card? Again, these are questions that I found myself having to ask and run around and figure out. So again, for finances, you want to be able to ask these questions now while you can get the information. And if you're beyond that point, do your research. We'll talk in a second. If you're not on the account, what can you do? Becoming an authorized person. Every business or organization will have different rules or procedures. You may go to Chase and they may say, well, just sign an affidavit saying that you're the spouse. And I'm sure that's not that simple. But my point is, you may turn around and go to Neighbors and they will say, well, we need to draw blood. We need your social security number. You know, we need your pastor to come over and talk to us. Every business. And so you want to keep an open mind, because we do see that, well, I just went to Capital One and they didn't need all of this information. Why are you guys giving me such a hard time? Every institution is going to be different. Contact the business first to learn about their guidelines and procedures. You know, you don't have to give them all of your personal information, but you can say, hey, you know, I have a person that I may need to get access to their account sooner or later and take over for whatever reason. What is the process? What are my options? Right? Because they're going to be different options, right? Use discretion when possible. I don't believe in telling everybody every story. And the reason being, I've seen financial institutions, and I'll give you an example. You can call them and say, hey, Joe Smith is my brother, and I have a POA on him, and he passed this morning, and before you know it, they've frozen the account. You just called to ask the question. And before you can figure out which way is up or down, you know, they've taken it upon themselves to protect the credit union, protect the bank, to protect their assets. So you want to use some type of discretion. Take notes when you call somebody. Again, back to that journal. Hopefully everybody will go get a journal today if you don't have one, right? Note the date. Who did you talk to? What information did they ask you? What information did they give you? What documentation did they say you needed? Or if you had to submit it, when did you submit it? Did you email it? Did you fax it? Did you confirm that they received it, right? I'd send documents and I'd wait what I thought was an appropriate amount of time, a week or two, only to call back. Well, no, we never even received it. Now I'm back to square one. Thank God I didn't wait 30 days, right? Again, power of attorney. If you get a power of attorney, and I know that you'll have an attorney that will come and give you more details, but you want to be detailed. What exactly are you going to need to do with it, right? You don't want to be general. If you want to be able to go in and get credit, close out accounts, you want to be really, really specific. And if you do those assessments that we talked about earlier, you will know the things that you will probably need to have access to. So you do want to get a power of attorney, have your attorney be really, really specific and outline all of those financial things that you want to be able to be in control of. Understand that POAs are not accepted everywhere. Now, I was surprised to learn that, but a financial institution can refuse to accept it. So we walk in and we're like, I got my POA, my attorney's charged my money, and I got this, and I'm ready to do business. What do you mean you don't accept it? So make those calls first. Find out what their processing procedures are. Find out if they do take POAs. Most of them do, but there are some occasions where they don't. Understand the difference between a joint owner at financial institutions, okay? Sometimes you want somebody just to be there. I only want them to have money if I'm unconscious, right? Does not work that way. Sometimes it's either all access or no access. So you want to make sure you understand it. Maybe you want information only to where they're not giving you access to the account. They're not giving you money or allowing you to make any changes, but they could say, yes, you know, this is my neighbor. She's helping me out. I want her to be able to call in and get my balances for me. And in some cases, they could do that to where all the person is doing is getting information. They're not able to make a change. They can't come get money, take money or anything. They can just get the information that they can share with the person. So make sure that you understand what it takes to become an authorized person, whether it's energy, whether it's COPS, whether it's, you know, a bank account. Understand what it takes to do that. And I think we have just a couple more slides and then I'll take questions. Sufficient funds, provide assistance as needed. Discuss with your loved ones their wishes. If they're still able to tell you what their wishes are in terms of their money, what debt they have, how they want things to go, have those discussions now. Anticipate future financial needs and adjust your budget accordingly. That's the one thing about a budget. It changes all the time. All right, our needs this month are going to be different next month, especially gas prices don't stop going up, right? So anticipate those needs. Work on paying down debt if debt exists. If necessary, liquidate assets. Review insurance coverages, your medical and your life insurance. Make sure, again, you do as comprehensive a job in terms of their finances so that nothing catches you as surprise, right? You may not know that it's coming, but if you know, okay, I know where we stand on this. Now, let me get a plan together. But if you don't even know where we stand, right, or what this is or what that is, then it just makes it, again, that stressful circumstance. If there is an insufficient fund, review your budget to identify, again, needs versus wants, right? Maybe they've lived a very, very comfortable life, but now things are changing. And we may have to look at, these are the things that you need and these are the things that you want. We definitely want to make sure we have the resources for what you need. And then we may have to pick and choose those things that we want, okay? Because life is changing. Again, review that budget to identify them, cut down on the wants, investigate supplemental resources. Just like you're here, this is a resource for you. This was a great resource for me, both emotionally and financially. I remember, you know, that first breakdown after my dad became sick, it just kind of becoming overwhelmed. This was the place that I came to. This was the place that said, hey, and actually it was by phone. Christy stayed on the phone with me probably for hours. She probably got written up. What is she doing on the phone all day long, right? But she was such an asset to me. And so that's why I have a special, real special place in my heart for this particular institution, because they help me in so many different ways. So look for those support resources, especially those that may have financial benefits, whether it's something like SNAP, Meals on Wheels. There are tons of nonprofit organizations that exist to support you. So it's just a matter of reaching out to them. And remember, never be afraid to ask for help. You know, you don't have to carry this load on your own. I mean, places like the Alzheimer's of Baton Rouge is here to help you. Definitely some of the other speakers you have, if you come and find me at my financial institution, I will definitely help in any way I can. But the real point is, know that there are resources out there. They can help you put this all together. I know this is a lot to digest. You know, a lot of knows what I gotta go home, and she gave me all this homework. Where do I start? I'll share this PowerPoint if anybody needs it, because again, you know, you may forget, what else did she say to do? You will have this at your disposal, but just again, don't shy away from asking for assistance on whether it's prescriptions. 211 is a good resource. They can tell you all the different nonprofit organizations that are here to assist with your different needs. You may not know that you need help today, but just remember that there are resources out there regardless of what you face. As I said again, don't be afraid to ask for help. Hopefully this is the last one. Anticipating expenses, again, just forward thinking. Things may look great today. You want to make sure that you anticipate. Again, just doctor visits. Obviously, as your loved one becomes older and the disease progresses, they're probably going to have more doctor visits. They may have special diets that they need to account for, medical supplies, medical equipment, or prescriptions. So again, even though the budget looks good today, be forward thinking so that you include the potential of those things. And that's through conversations with your physicians. They can tell you what to expect medically, but make sure you're incorporating those things into your budget. All right, I said a mouthful. And I think we've got about maybe 10 minutes or so left. 10 minutes or so left if you have any questions. Yes.
Do you have any recommendations on financial institutions when they will not accept the power of attorney?
Well, at that point, I assume that the account is already open. And if they won't accept it, I would imagine probably legal counsel may be able to help you with finding a route around that. I don't want to misspeak definitely in terms of what legal rights, but I would imagine, you know, there are probably rules in place to where you may have to declare yourself as, you know, the formal caregiver, if you will, that person's not able to take care of themselves. But again, that would be something for complete.
We had an experience with my mother-in-law when she passed away, that Capital One wouldn't accept her power of attorney for us, and we were on all of her accounts because it was older than 5 years.
Oh, wow. And that's why, again, now is why you want to ask those questions. Like I said, financial institutions, and it's not just them. They have so many different rules and guidelines that it's just surprising. Even being in a financial institution, my father had accounts set up for my kids at a financial institution. And I remember, because it was for college and my son was getting ready, he was maybe 6 months away, maybe it was his senior year, and I contacted them to just find out, well, what is the process? And because my dad was suffering from Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia, he was not really in a position to have to, didn't want to have to take him to a financial institution, but it was so much rhetoric and red tape that I found myself having to go ahead and move it now, because I felt like if he passed or really became incapacitated, like, because even when my child turned 18, I thought that would have been the magical number. He could go in and get it himself and use it for college. No, they had so much red tape. So definitely ask those questions. You know, obviously, if you've not opened an account, it's great to ask ahead of time. But if you just anticipate that you will need access to account, find out what their rules are. Just ask those questions.
Ms. Patsy asked, what is 211 services?
So that is a host of services. I think it's put on by United Way. And so basically it will provide services or access to like the Red Cross, Meals on Wheels, the Council for Aging. So all the different support networks that are there that may have a service that you need. Sometimes you may need medical transportation. Maybe your loved one may be wheelchair bound and you have a car, and you know, you may not be able to get them in and out, and maybe you need a van service. So 211, you can dial that number and then you can tell them what your need is, and then they can direct you to what organization may be able to assist you with your need. Yes.
Now, I saw the one slide where you said, check with the institutions for documentation that they require. You know, once someone gets to a point, because usually what happens is by the time you find out they're really, really that sick,
It's too late.
it's too late, and it's just a problem. You're trying to go through all the papers. So, I mean, what do you suggest? Try to get the family member, this person, to relinquish or at least put you on some of these accounts
Exactly, if you're,
prior to them getting to that point, because I've been there and it's like a nightmare.
yes, if you can definitely get them to do it now, voluntarily, definitely, have that discussion on what those accounts are and why, obviously have that candid discussion why you would need to. And then it's usually a little bit easier if the two of you can go in, because that's what happened when we realized my dad was not going to be able to take care of his affairs. He was still at a point where he could speak for himself, and we went to the financial institutions and added me, and it made it a lot easier. But just in that initial, because what happened is, I mentioned before, he kind of fell. We didn't find him for like 12 hours, so he ended up being in the hospital. He was, not very lucid afterwards. So again, we were really in the dark in terms of where, we see how it was actually her earlier back then. We see some of these, these statements, but he had a little business, which one's his business, which one's his personal. And so it became a little challenging, but I was able to get the information, and then we were able to go ahead and get a power of attorney. And he was still at a state where he could sign the power of attorney and understand it. But I know that, again, I'll let the attorney talk about that. I'm sure that there are guidelines or policies, procedures put in place if that person can't sign for it, but I'll let the attorney talk.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Ms. Hammond. How are we gonna? I so enjoyed that. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your personal experiences. I know that can be really